As of early May 2026, the mood inside the White House has shifted from the combative optimism of the administration's first year to a distinct fortress-like mentality. The catalyst for this shift is a series of quiet 30-minute briefings conducted by the White House counsel's office. These are not general policy meetings. They are tactical sessions designed for political appointees who are increasingly likely to face a Democratic-controlled Congress by early next year. Recent polling from the Washington Post, ABC News, and Ipsos indicates a growing 5-point lead for Democrats in the House, a gap that has widened as the administration grapples with the economic and diplomatic fallout of the ongoing Iran war and the controversial intervention in Venezuela. For the legal team led by White House counsel David Warrington, who succeeded Ed Siskel earlier this year, the mission is now clear: insulate the executive branch from the inevitable surge of subpoenas, depositions, and oversight inquiries that a change in congressional leadership would bring. These briefings, described by attendees as sober-eyed conversations, represent the administration's realization that the executive privilege they have relied upon may soon be tested by a hostile legislative branch with the power of the gavel. The sense of crisis is no longer theoretical, it is operational. As the president's approval ratings continue to hit record lows, the legal machinery is being retooled to handle a worst-case scenario where every internal memo, every email, and every decision made in the heat of the last 18 months becomes a potential exhibit in a congressional hearing. This is the quiet preparation for a legal storm that could define the second half of the term and the 2028 cycle beyond it. The content of these briefings, centered around a meticulous PowerPoint presentation, offers a rare window into the administrative state's defensive playbook. Staffers are being instructed on the granular details of how congressional oversight functions, specifically how to navigate the oversight canon of the 2020s. The core directive is clear: exercise extreme caution in written communications. In an era where every Slack message and encrypted text can be subject to a records request, the counsel's office is urging a return to verbal-first communication for sensitive deliberations. This is a direct response to the painful experiences of the first term, where internal communications became the foundation for multiple investigations. However, the advice goes beyond mere caution. Appointees are being trained on strategic attrition, the art of responding to inquiries in a way that is technically compliant but strategically minimal. The goal is to avoid the perception of a total blockade, which could trigger immediate judicial intervention, while ensuring that no more information than necessary is handed over. This is a delicate legal dance. Under David Warrington's leadership, the counsel's office has abandoned the more traditional, collaborative approach of his predecessor, Ed Siskel, in favor of a combative posture that mirrors the president's own rhetoric. The briefings emphasize that the transition to a Democratic House will likely see a focus on what the administration terms its America First pillars, but what the opposition calls executive overreach. By preparing staff now, months before a single vote is cast, the White House is attempting to bake a culture of legal defense into the daily operations of every agency, from the Department of Energy to the newly reshaped Department of Justice. The message to appointees is simple: your legacy will not be the policies you enacted, but the records you didn't leave behind. The urgency of these legal preparations is fueled by the specific vectors of oversight that a Democratic majority is expected to target. Chief among them is the administration's foreign policy, particularly the escalating conflict with Iran and the high-stakes kidnapping of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. These actions, which have sparked a global energy crisis and pushed the cost of living to historic highs, are seen by the White House counsel as prime targets for blue wave investigations. The legal team anticipates that committees will move beyond policy critiques and into the realm of procedural legality, questioning whether the administration bypassed necessary congressional authorizations or ignored intelligence that contradicted its strategic goals. There is also the matter of Schedule F, the executive order that allowed for the mass dismissal of career civil servants and their replacement with political loyalists. This move, which decimated the ranks of traditional bureaucracy, is viewed by legal scholars as a ticking time bomb for oversight. If Democrats win, every one of those firings will be scrutinized for civil service violations and political retaliation. The White House counsel is already preparing the executive privilege defense for these files, arguing that the president has the absolute authority to manage the federal workforce. But as the Supreme Court prepares to hear major merits cases in its 2026 term, cases that will decide the limits of executive power on everything from tariffs to birthright citizenship, the legal ground is shifting. The administration has found success on the shadow docket in 2025, with a conservative majority often siding with the president's emergency requests. However, legal experts warn that as the president's political capital fades, the court may feel more emboldened to set clear, permanent limits on presidential authority. The counsel's office knows that a loss in the midterms would signal to the judiciary that the president no longer carries a popular mandate, potentially leading to a series of landmark rulings that could dismantle the administration's most aggressive policies. The fortress is being built on a foundation of legal precedent that is itself under immense pressure. To understand the current defensive posture, one must understand the evolution of the White House counsel's role. Ed Siskel, a veteran of the Obama-era Benghazi and Solyndra defenses, was brought in for his navigation skills, his ability to work within the system to protect the presidency. But as the political climate grew more toxic, Siskel's departure for private practice in early 2025 marked the end of the navigator era. His successor, David Warrington, represents the warrior era. Warrington's strategy is not about de-escalation, it is about maximalist defense. In the private briefings, Warrington's team has made it clear that the administration will not merely respond to oversight, it will challenge the very legitimacy of the committees conducting it. This includes the possibility of ignoring lower court orders, a tactic the administration has already experimented with in immigration cases. The legal strategy is increasingly tied to the 2028 presidential cycle. If the administration can stall oversight through the end of 2026 and into 2027, they can frame the investigations as a partisan witch hunt designed to interfere with the next election. This is a high-risk gamble. It assumes that the Republican base will remain energized by the narrative of a deep state offensive and that the Supreme Court will maintain its protective stance on the executive branch. However, the briefings suggest a deep-seated fear that a total Democratic takeover of Congress could lead to something far more consequential than just oversight, the specter of impeachment. While Democrats have avoided the I word for months to maintain their lead with moderate voters, the president himself has acknowledged the midterm jinx, stating that a loss would inevitably lead to impeachment proceedings. The counsel's office is already drafting the legal briefs to counter this possibility, focusing on a narrow interpretation of high crimes and misdemeanors that excludes policy disagreements over the Iran war or the Venezuela intervention. They are preparing for a trial of the century, even as they hope to prevent it through the prophylactic measures being taught in these 30-minute sessions. The ultimate goal of the Fortress briefings is to ensure that the administration does not lose its momentum, even if it loses its majority. By training every appointee to think like a litigator, the White House is attempting to create a decentralized defense system that can withstand a multi-front assault from dozens of congressional committees. But as these officials leave the briefings and return to their desks, the sober-eyed reality remains. The administrative state is in a state of strategic retreat. The focus is no longer on the America First agenda, but on the preservation of the people who enacted it. In the coming months, we will see if this survival doctrine holds. Will the warnings against written records prevent the next major leak, or will they only create a greater sense of suspicion among the public? Will the combative stance of David Warrington protect the president, or will it alienate the very judges who currently serve as his most effective shield? As May 2026 unfolds, the White House is not just campaigning for the next 2 years, it is litigating for its place in history. The quiet rooms of the West Wing are now the most important theaters of American power, not because of the laws being made, but because of the legal defenses being forged. In the end, the legacy of this administration may not be decided at the ballot box in November, but in the deposition rooms and courtrooms of 2027. This is the reality of the 2026 midterms. The election is merely the opening bell for a legal war that has already begun. Behind the PowerPoint slides and the tactical advice lies a fundamental truth. In Washington, power is not just about who makes the rules, but who survives the investigations into how those rules were made. As the briefings continue, the fortress is being reinforced, brick by legal brick, against a wave that everyone in the room knows is coming. For this administration, the defense is the only offense left. This has been a specialized look into the legal war room of the 2026 midterms. Join us as we continue to track the power dynamics that define our era. This is intelligence-led journalism for the modern citizen. Thank you for watching.